right. How about that old memory? So your amazing children have come together to talk about all the wonderful baseball experiences and memories that we had with you. We thought it'd be fun to put them all together and take a little trip down memory lane. So it all started with the Detroit Tigers way back from 1968 all the way up to your wonderful Diamondbacks over the last 20-some years. First, we're going to start with young Bill. Young Bill has the memory of an elephant and the appetite. And he recalls the very first game that you brought him to, all the way back from 1968. Bill recalls Tommy John of the Chicago White Sox throwing a little chin music to Dick McCullough in the third inning of that game. McCullough took exception to that and charged him out and ended in a big fight and actually dislocated Tommy John's shoulder, and he was out for the rest of the year. Although we have heard of Tommy John's surgery, that was not the cause of it. He did have elbow surgery later, which is a totally different story. Nonetheless, if that's not enough for one game, Bill also remembers in the sixth inning, Al Kaline and Willie Horton hitting back-to-back home runs. Pretty impressive game. But then in the ninth inning, Bill recalls a man wearing nothing but a green bathing suit jumping into the field and running around the outfield until security stopped him and escorted him out. So quite a memory for Bill in his very first baseball game. I guess that was 1968, and the Indians went on to win. Or the Indians, sorry, Linda. Listen, Linda. The Tigers went on to win the World Series that year. So, I don't know. Pretty tough to top that story. Next thing you know, Bill's going to try to convince me that Sean caught Coy Hill's first home run ball when you guys took him to a Diamondbacks game or something like that. I mean, seriously. If that is true, do you know that Coy Hill actually played his collegiate ball at Wichita State? So all kinds of trivia going on here. Anyways, moving on. So Katie couldn't top Bill's stories. Who could? But she does have a couple of memories of her own, some of them that keep me up at night still. One is she brought me to, I think it was my very first Tigers game. I was probably about 8 years old. And we had to stop in beautiful Flint, Michigan to pick up Scott. And Scott lived at a really, really high level, high class apartment. And I was instructed to stay in the car while she went and got Scott. Well, I got a little anxious, a little nervous, so I decided to get out of the car and walk into the apartment. And I ended up in the wrong apartment, and I was witnessing things I think that only happened in Flint, Michigan. So I was scared, I was crying, I was lost, I didn't know what to do, and next thing I know, I could hear Katie screaming from the parking lot, which was good because then I followed her screams and made my way back to the car. So thanks for that, Katie. Good times. But they took me to the game, had a good time. A couple other things I remember is when we got to the seats, we sat down, and I was sitting next to this not old man, probably younger than me now, but he was hammered, drinking, big fat boozer, having a great old time, but spilling beer all over me and slobbering all over me, and Scott was nice enough to switch seats with me, so I appreciated that. That guy would probably be fun to hang around now, but anyways. And then at the end of the game, I saw these pair of Detroit Tiger wristbands that I really, really wanted. And they probably cost $20 back then. And Katie said no, which makes sense. But at the time, I was being a spoiled brat, and I cried. And on the way home, wouldn't you know it, they pulled them out of a bag and gave them to me. And I think I kept those things for about 15, 20 years. I don't know. So that was my Katie's memories of some baseball. And along with that, Katie and Nancy teamed up to, back in 1998, they actually sent a letter to the Detroit Free Press to Bob Talbert, who was a columnist, and their story was called the Detroit Tigers All-Food Team. So Nancy and Katie sent in their letter to Bob Talbert, and it got printed in the Free Press. Unfortunately, I don't have the date, but Nancy saved the article, which is pretty tremendous, so I'm going to read it to you. It's called "These Tigers Should Meet," M-E-A-T, at Home Plate. Names People Play, Bob Talbert, Saturday Special. Tiger and food fans Scott and Katie Ignatowski of Midland and Troy's Nancy Leahy have come up with the first Tiger all-food team. An outfield of Louis Salad Bar, Chet Lemon, and Gary Lettuce, an infield of Bob Evans, Lou Worcestershire, Tommy Cookins, and Alan Spammel, and Matt Cokes and Mike Heathbar catching. Starting pitchers, Frank Banana and Brandy Alexander. Dave Berger is the DH with Mike Cinnamon in the bullpen. That was their article that got printed. And Talbert added, "Hey gang, good game. And didn't we just sign Brad Lynn?" Good stuff. As I'm reading this article, one thing that really stands out that I thought was even not as funny, of course, Nancy and Katie, but he had the celebrity lookalikes, and here's his picture of celebrity lookalike of Nancy Reagan and a pelican. I mean, that is good journalism. Okay, moving on. So Diane, in typical Diane fashion, she got all nostalgic, remembered her fondest baseball memories. Something to do with a bunch of broke medical students taking precious study time away and going to a Tigers game. I guess a couple of her friends were going to go, and they were going to ask a friend of theirs that said had never been to a baseball game before. So they're all excited on a Saturday afternoon. They picked him up, and when they picked him up, they were teasing him because the guy showed up running to the car wearing his baseball mitt. So we got to the stadium, and here's a 25-year-old man blending in well with all the 8-year-olds that were hoping to catch a fly ball. And I guess since they were poor med students, they had to sit all the way up in the upper deck. And as they're teasing him the whole time, he's wearing his baseball mitt. Lo and behold, foul ball, and he snags it. A great memory for her. She kept on going, and we all kind of interrupted her and said, "Yeah, that's great, Diane, but that's not nearly as exciting as the time that you bashed Eddie Baxter in the face with a bat in our front yard, sending him to the ER, and had to get multiple stitches across his forehead. Now that's a good story." So we're going to stick with that one. So now we're going to move on to Dave. Dave brought up a few memories I think are worth mentioning. First of all, do you remember my friend and classmate in Blessed Sacrament named Mike Henton? I remember the very first day at kindergarten, and Jeff Gandy walked up to Mike Henton and looked at him and said, "I'm going to give you a nickname. I'm going to call you Honky." And that was it. From there on out, we called Mike Henton Honky Henton. That was his name. You can't make that stuff up. So anyways, poor Honky Henton, he had an unfortunate experience one day at the ballpark. I think we were 7 years old, T-ball league, right? And I think it can best be expressed in a poem. So you probably remember the famous poem from, it was called Casey at the Bat by Ernest Lawrence Thayer. I won't read the whole thing. I'm just going to read the last stanza. I know everybody's heard this before, but this is how the last stanza goes. "Oh, somewhere in this favored land, the sun is shining bright. The band is playing somewhere, and somewhere hearts are light. And somewhere men are laughing, and somewhere children shout. But there is no joy in Mudville. Mighty Casey has struck out." Well, old Honky Henton had a similar experience in 7-year-old T-ball league. The poem, unfortunately, was not as famous as Thayer's, but the last stanza goes something like this, and I'll just read the last stanza once again. "Oh, right here on the Adams Elementary fields, balls are getting blasted off the tee. Everyone is rounding the bases, and their hearts are full of glee. All the kids are laughing. With joy you hear them singing, suddenly interrupted by groans of disbelief. Honky Henton struck out swinging." True story. All right, moving on. I have a few memories of my own. The first is when Mom came to visit. It was, I believe, in 1999 when Kaylee was born in July. And the Indians were having their infamous run. They had 455 consecutive sellouts from 1995 to 2001. And Mom really wanted to go to a game. So I managed to get some tickets. Probably paid way too much for lousy tickets way out in the bleachers. And it was about 100 degrees that day, and we sat out in right field with the sun beating on us the entire game. And I remember thinking how miserable it was. And I looked over, and Mom had a smile on her face the whole time, and we had a blast. She just loved it. And I'll never forget how much fun that was, just sitting there watching baseball. So it was great. It was a priceless time. Not as good as, bashing Eddie Baxter's head open with a bat, but it was nonetheless, it was a priceless time. But my favorite baseball memory is back from 2001. A few of us were visiting you guys in Tucson, and it was in October, and the Diamondbacks were in the World Series playing the New York Yankees. So Matt Williams grounded out in the second inning. He grounded out to third, and I remember Dad just went on a tirade about how bad Matt Williams stinks. He's a bum. He's overrated. And I argued with Dad. I said, no, he's actually a pretty good player, Dad. He played for the Indians for a couple years. He's a lifetime 270 hitter. He hits 40 home runs a year. He's pretty good. And Dad hadn't wanted nothing to do with it. He's a bum. He's a lousy loser bum. He's going to single-handedly cost the Diamondbacks a World Series. So, Dad was just in one of those moods. So, let's skip ahead to the 7th inning, shall we?
Ready. And the 0-1. And a high drive. There it goes. 4-0 Diamondbacks. Matt Williams, a three-run homer. How about that? He crushed that ball. Matt Williams is a postseason player, and he acknowledges the crowd. You talk about a huge hit, folks. As Tom Brenneman would say, it don't get any better than that. And they're ready.
So,
And the
when that happened, I remember Dad went from hating on Matt Williams to running around the house like a lunatic with his hands up in the air. Matt Williams is my favorite player! Matt Williams is my favorite player! Fantastic experience. Diamondbacks went and won the World Series. So I'm pretty sure, Dad, you remember that as well. So, anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this trip down baseball memory lane. Fun times, and once again, we want to thank you for all those fun times that you shared with us. And to keep the baseball memories flowing, we want to offer you guys an early Mother's Day and Father's Day gift to renew the 2018 the Major League Baseball package, cable package, so you guys can watch all your Diamondbacks games every night. Hopefully muscling out catering for us so you don't have to watch those lousy Royals and you can watch the Diamondbacks instead. So enjoy the present and hope you guys enjoyed this little visit, and we will talk to you soon. Bye-bye. Oh, one correction. The letter that Nancy and Katie sent to Bob Talbert was not 1998, it was 1988. Sorry for that. Yep, a pelican. Matt Williams is my favorite player! Matt Williams is my favorite player! Woo!